We got a whole lot of news that we got to break down. I think we're going to have a pretty good time doing it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbett, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. It's Fridays, ladies and gentlemen, which means if you're new here, the day that we recap everything that kind of went on during spring training, try to give you guys sort of this compact video of all the latest news and happenings with the Boston Red Sox so you guys don't have to fish around all over the place. And today, we're starting this conversation with Payton Tolle. And no, we're not talking about Payton Tolle in terms of his on-field play so far this season. It's been just 2 games, so I'm not going to make any conclusions, regardless of the fact that he didn't look absolutely fantastic out there. What I did want to talk about is the fact that every WBC year, Alex Cora tasked the clubhouse with putting together presentations for their country. This year, Payton Tolle was tasked with the idea of making a presentation about the United States of America. And well, considering if you guys have any idea about Payton Tolle's personality, you can kind of guess where this one is going. Let me include some clips in here so you guys understand what I'm talking about.
I would like to first start off by honoring the Boston Red Sox 2 WBC members, Mr. Garrett Whitlock and Roman Anthony. Here's some inventions in the United States. Flight, NASCAR, honey buns, baseball, and Hollywood film. Talk about food in the U.S. We fry everything. It's damn good, too. Things that are uniquely American. Hot dogs on the 4th, the Rose Bowl, a nice Fenway Frank.
I mean, this was just an all-time presentation, right? I mean, 0 notes, absolute perfection. The guy went absolutely crazy. I can't show the whole thing because there's some copyrighted music in there, but just unbelievably funny stuff from Payton Tolle. I sit here with Tolle, and it's like, yeah, he's far from a finished product, right? And I think there's still plenty of time for him to continue to develop and continue to refine things, but there is a large part of me that is just begging for this dude to become a star for the Boston Red Sox. I mean, he doesn't even have to be like a certifiable ace or anything, but just give me a guy who's going to be in this rotation once every 5 days because the personality is just that fun. It's been a while since we've had a legitimate personality like this that's just so outgoing, so unbelievably funny. He's such an easy guy to root for, and I'm hoping that we get the best out of Payton Tolle at some point early on here. I'm going to start to see, I feel like, a lot of guys kind of doubting Payton Tolle because of, some early spring training performances or some stuff last year. You got to remember, last year was his first professional season ever, right? This guy has a ton of time to really sort of retune what he's doing on the mound. It doesn't even matter if he spends most of the year in triple A or whatever, because there's just so much potential going forward with this dude. So someone to pay attention to for sure, but I had to start with this speech because it was unbelievable. Now we can get into some actual baseball conversations, and the biggest thing for me to kind of remind you guys of as we get into these is it's only been a couple of days, right? Most of these guys have only played in 3 or 4 games, and most of these guys have only played, 10 or 11 innings, so it's impossible to sit here and make any sort of conclusions one way or the other about what their season's going to look like, right? Honestly, for the most part, our entire spring training, it's tough to make any sort of conclusions as to what a guy's going to look like. So I'm not going to kind of make any grand declarations in this video, but I would be amiss if I didn't include some of the players that have stood out a little bit early on in spring training at the major league level this year. The first one being Ceddanne Rafaela, who in 4 games is 3 for 10 with 2 doubles and a home run. This dude has yet to hit a regular base knock here, a little single up the middle or anything like that. He's absolutely crushing baseballs at the moment. Again, something to pay attention to, nothing to really take to heart. Trevor Story as well has 4 hits in 3 games, 2 doubles on there. One probably should have been a home run if he was playing at Fenway Park. And we did see Willson Contreras with his first home run in a Red Sox uniform. I know we talk about his pull air percentage a lot and how that could be beneficial for a guy who's going to be playing 81 games at Fenway Park, but it is kind of nice to see a righty take a ball and put it out of the yard the opposite way. We're saying it's been since JD Martinez that we've seen that kind of power production from a right-handed hitter. I think we've seen it a little bit in like short bursts throughout the last couple of years, but Willson Contreras just strikes me as a guy that's going to be able to do that not not on the regular, but on time-to-time occasions. And I think that's really good for the Red Sox lineup. I think when you're looking at it again, I'm not going to put any sort of grand declarations on these, but it's kind of nice to see a guy like Trevor Story, come out of a season where he really finished it very, very well, and building on that early on in spring training. We'll see how these guys sort of develop through spring. And again, honestly, we could be sitting here 3 weeks from now and Cedon could only have 3 hits in spring training, and then it's an entirely different conversation, right? These guys like Roman Anthony, who's just, I think he's like 1 for 10 or whatever it may end up being right now, could end up being, 6 for 15 or whatever by the end. I don't even know if that's possible, but 6 for 15 by the end of next week or whatever it may end up being, right? So nothing crazy to take out of this. Just wanted to point out some of the guys that have been doing well in spring so far. The kind of bigger baseball thing I wanted to talk about was the competition for the 5th roster spot in the rotation. Now, I know we've talked about this a few times on this channel, but we did get a pretty big update, in my opinion. I would even consider it a major one when it comes to that competition for that 5th spot, because this week, Alex Cora revealed that, to no one's surprise, that both Kutter and Sandoval are behind in terms of getting themselves ready for opening day. Sandoval is still working his way up in live batting practice, trying to get himself on the mound in an actual game. Kutter is kind of in the backfields. He's still kind of doing these up and down type things, which is essentially just a bullpen at the end of the day. I am now curious if that shift for that 5th roster spot in the rotation is now shifting towards Oviedo, Payton, Tolle, and Conley Early, right? If they're kind of honing in on these 3 guys. What's interesting about this is that these 2 players could still potentially have the opportunity to make the opening day roster. If a guy like, Sandoval, who appears to be a little bit further along in his progress than Kutter Crawford, ends up about a week or 2 behind, everybody else, and the Red Sox kind of use these off days early on in the season to make sure that he's ready to go for his first start of the year, I think it's still possible that one of these 2 end up in the rotation starting 2026. But at the same time, too, if they're 2 or 3 weeks behind the rest of these guys, it sounds like Kutter's probably 3 or 4. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox to start figuring out between Oviedo, Early, and Tolle who's the guy that they're most comfortable with to start the season, right? Because all of these guys have options, meaning that it's okay to start one of these guys on the roster, even if it means, hey, we're going to use you for 2 or 3 starts, then we're going to bring you back here, and we're going to let you hone your skills in AAA a little bit. In my mind, again, I've talked about this before, and I'll say it again, I still think Conley Early, at least right now, is a little bit above these other 2. Again, we just talked about Tolle in his first couple of starts, and it really looks like there's still stuff to refine there. Oviedo, I think, has a really strong case to make the 5th spot. I think the Red Sox want him ultimately to be this 5th starter in the rotation. But again, if he can't figure out how to, bring his command under control here, I think the Red Sox have the opportunity to say, Early, who's looked really good this spring, and again, it's 1 singular start, so I'm not making any grand declarations here, but a guy who, if he could continue that, really kind of puts himself at the forefront of being able to make this roster out of spring training. So if we're looking at in terms of injury updates and battles going on this spring, personally, I think this may be one of the bigger ones, if not the biggest one to be paying attention to, right? Because I just think there's so many different options here, and all of them have to kind of refine specific things. With Tolle, it's the off-speed stuff. With Oviedo, it's control, and with Early, it's velocity, and it's going to be really interesting to see which one of these guys can really do that in a short amount of time, enough where, especially if one of these 2 guys can't figure themselves out before opening day, can get themselves on this roster. So definitely something to pay attention to if you're watching spring training games. There are 2 more things that I wanted to touch on in this video. The first one is about a prospect that is just, flat out shocking everybody right now. My plan is to make a deep dive video into this guy this weekend, so I'm not going to get too deep into, why he's shocking everybody. You'll have to wait on the video for that, but the guy's name is Justin Gonzalez, and so far this camp, he's been referred to as a behemoth, an absolute monster, and it's not because he's a scary dude to look at, it's because he came into camp 2 inches taller and is now 6'6" and 277 pounds. You're at the point now where you've got other prospects looking at this guy and being like, where the hell did this guy come from, right? In this article by Alex Spear, again, all of this information is brought together basically by articles from these reporters, so they're all going to be in the description of this video if you want to take a look at them. Got pieces in here where it's like, yeah, even kneeling down, he's almost as tall as Cedon Rafaela. The dude is just an absolute monster, hits the ball incredibly hard. The goal for him this year at just 19 years old, imagine being being 6'6" and 277 at 19, man, that would be awesome. The goal for him is to start hitting the ball in the air a lot more. He's got a great control over the strike zone. It's just a matter of trying to lift the ball and get it out of the ballpark that he's been struggling with a little bit. If he figures that out, this guy could be, I mean, unbelievably good at the plate. So something, again, if we're talking about who's a guy that we're looking at right now that's not going to make the opening day roster, but is entertaining this spring and is a prospect to follow along with this season, I think everyone's kind of pointing at Justin Gonzalez at the moment. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we wrapped up this video was I feel like once again I got to touch on this Marcelo Mayer stuff, because we talked about this, I think it was earlier this week. We also talked about it kind of at the beginning of last week too. This is our third time mentioning it, but we're at the point now where it feels like this Marcelo stuff is starting to snowball a little bit. It's gone from, oh, this is an interesting comment for Cora, to all of a sudden this week it's like an absolute wildfire as to what's going on with Marcelo. I personally, I think what's going on here is that there isn't a ton of like off the field news for the Red Sox, and so the one thing that is obviously going to be talked about a whole lot more. But I'm maintaining my position, right? I'm still not panicking about the idea of Alex Cora challenging Marcelo Mayer. I still sit here and I look at Alex Cora and who he's been as a manager for years now with the Red Sox, and his best attribute is being able to get the best out of individual players, managing personalities. And if he feels as though challenging Marcelo Mayer is the right way to go, I trust him 100% to do that. I also think, this isn't so much the Red Sox saying we don't trust Marcelo, we don't want Marcelo, or we have issues with Marcelo. I think it's just simply Alex Cora not willing to give an opening day spot to a young, unproven player, which is an extremely normal thing in all of sports, for the manager or the GM or whatever of this team to not guarantee a spot to somebody who hasn't proven they can take that spot and run with it yet. Right, Alex Cora's mind, it's like, yeah, Marcelo Mayer's the number one person here. We just need to ensure that he knows that he can be the number one person, and he proves that he could be the number one person. And I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, worst case scenario, the guy isn't ready for Major League Baseball, and he starts the year in AAA and works his way into Major League Baseball. It would suck, but I don't think that's like, we've failed this prospect, he's a bust, whatever it may end up being, which is what's being talked about right now. I just feel like we're kind of overblowing this story to a 9th degree when it doesn't need to be. Marcelo is starting games today. Unfortunately, it's against Chris Sale, which probably won't bode incredibly well for him, but he's sitting 5th in the lineup. He's playing second base. He's getting into games, right? I feel like by the time we get at the end of March, this is going to be a non-story. Again, I go back to the idea of it's just simply the only like dramatic thing going on with the Red Sox right now. So obviously it's the one that's being focused on the most, but I don't think these guys have beef. I don't think Cora doesn't believe in Mayer. I don't think the Red Sox don't believe in Mayer. I think it's just simply a challenged issue to a guy who needs to be challenged. So I don't really know where all of this information is coming from. I've seen a lot of people also point to something Alex Cora said early on this year when he had, most of his starting lineup in there, and said that there was most of his starting lineup, and people went, oh, Marcelo isn't in there, so he's not going to be starting on the team. But they're negating the fact that right after saying that, he also said, obviously not second base, though. And so it's like, okay, well, we know Marcelo's probably going to start at second base this season if he gets the job. Like, to me, it's still, I think Marcelo Mayer's the number one option. I'm still going to be shocked if he's not on the team. Overall, I would say some pretty interesting news this week, right? I would say some pretty major updates in terms of where, the rotation's going to be sitting this season. I would say, especially with Marcelo, there's been some major updates there. I don't know if they're actual major updates or manufactured major updates, but they're there as well. I think this week's in particular, coming into Saturday and Sunday and whatever, is going to be incredibly interesting because we're going to start to see guys leaving for the WBC, which means we're going to start to see other players highlighted a lot. Christian Campbell's going to be in games a lot more. Alan Castro, another minor league player that people are paying attention to, is going to get a lot more reps in the outfield. You're probably going to see Marcelo, Durbin, and Story on the infield a lot more, right? I think over this next week, we're going to start to see the Red Sox refine their roster quite a bit, and that's when we're going to really get into the sort of nitty-gritty of the spring training season. But until then, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of this news update. Is there anything in here that stood out to you more than anything else? As you're going through this, was there anything that I missed that you're saying, Corbin, how could we not talk about this? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.